Welcome back, warrior. Okay, last night and all day yesterday, we were working in the yard. So we are not doing the weighted vest because we are already really sore. We are going to be reading Exodus chapter 18. And the preface says, Jethro comes to Moses, bringing Moses' wife and sons, and offers sacrifices to the Lord. Moses sits in the judgment seat and hears all cases. Jethro counsels Moses to teach the law, to appoint lesser judges, and to delegate power to them. Oh, I remember this chapter about the stresses of leadership that need to be spread, right? Okay, so when Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, and that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, and her two sons, of which the name of the one was Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien in a strange land. And the name of the other was Eliezer, for the God of my father said he was mine help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses into the wilderness, where he encamped at the mount of God. And he said unto Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, I know, his name's Jethro, and he's his father-in-law, am come unto thee, and thy wife, and her two sons with her. Okay, really quick, we're going to do some quotes. Oh, actually, yeah, we'll do some quotes. So Moses was leading over 1 million Israelites in the wilderness, and they were traveling towards Sinai, which is near Midian, where Moses had lived when he escaped Egypt years ago, and lots of years earlier, in Exodus chapter 2. And Midian was where he met his wife Zipporah, where he had two sons, and where he received the priesthood. Jethro, mentioned in verse 1, was the father of Zipporah. So, guess what? He was Moses' father-in-law. And he was the priest of Midian. But Joseph Smith gave a Joseph Smith translation for this verse and corrected it to say that Jethro was the high priest of Midian. So who was Jethro and where did he receive the priesthood? Quote from John Vetnes, who is an Arab ensign, April 1974. By his third wife, Keturah, Abraham had 6 sons, whom he sent to dwell in the east, so that Isaac could inherit Canaan. Perhaps the best known tribe was the Midianite tribe. Moses' father-in-law Jethro was a Midianite, and his descendants, the Kenites, not related to Barbie and Ken, settled in Palestine with the Israelites under Joshua. Okay. So that was one quote. Okay, and then Moses was therefore a leader to a very large number of Israelites, and Moses had traveled close to Jethro, who had been Moses' spiritual leader. Jethro traveled to Moses to give him some really valuable advice. So Jethro was very important in Moses' life. Okay, quote, here we go. Jethro was very important in Moses' life and work. The Old Testament calls him the priest of Midian, but modern revelation through Joseph Smith throws important light upon the priesthood of Jethro. According to the Doctrine and Covenants, section 84, Moses received the high priesthood under the hand of his father-in-law, Jethro. It is reasonable to believe that Jethro held the office of a high priest and may have presided over a branch of the church in Midian. End quote. Okay, and that was by Sidney B. Sperry, The Mission of Moses Out of Bondage, Ensign, October 1973. Okay, and then Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and did obeisance and kissed him, and they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. And Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done unto Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all the travail that had come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. Dude, that would have been like such a cool reunion, because then Moses got to tell him like all the stuff. Like, guess what? You know, I was saying all this, and Pharaoh was not doing anything, and he would say stuff, and then he would lie and say he wouldn't release them, and then we'd have to do a plague that was a bad one, and then we had to do more plagues, and then the saddest plague of all, right? And then I bet it was not like a fun type of thing, but I bet it was very like, got to see lots of miracles by the hand of the Lord. And probably, you know, Jethro was so glad that Moses had so many good, awesome spiritual experiences. And would have been very wild to hear about all the things, right? And then, like, you know, when things happen to you in your life that are spiritual, and you tell your elders, like elder people than you, and they were the ones that helped you come unto Christ, they rejoice, you know, they're like, yes. And it is so cool to see. As my grandmother got super, super close to passing away, I found out that she had read the Bible so many times, and she had read it and knew the Bible stories. Now, what's really interesting is not one time during me being like super little did she ever convey that she had read the Bible. Or maybe she told me, I don't know, and I probably just didn't care because I was young. But I thought it was so interesting that towards the end of her life, I was able to talk to her about the Bible and how I was reading it. And she was able to be like so happy for me reading it. And she was able to tell me stuff. And she was raised in an orphanage, but the orphanage was a Catholic orphanage. And the Catholic orphanage was very like strict and very abusive to the orphans that lived there, because it was run by nuns. And so she never really talked about it because she had this relationship with the Bible and the people that loved the Bible and were trying to teach her the Bible, but they were not being like Christ. And so I think she just associated that kind of abuse with religion, and like she didn't want to do that, right? She didn't want to be that way. And so even though she always had pictures of Christ, and so I think she had a testimony of Jesus Christ, but she just had that like weird relationship where it's like, wait, if I love Jesus Christ, does that mean I have to be like abusive? Because I read the scriptures, and she knew scriptures. Like, she could say scriptures and recite them and stuff. But yeah, it was like kind of that weird thing where she didn't really like teach us scriptures because of that relationship that she had grown up with. And they divided her family. So she had to be in an all-girls school while her two brothers were in an all-boys school. And so she never really got to see them. So it was kind of hard for her to love, you know, that kind of environment because it was so mean. Anyway, okay, so we're on verse 7. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. Oh wait, I already read that one. Okay, so then it was a joyful reunion. Jethro went to see Moses along with Moses' wife and 2 sons. He had learned in Exodus 4 that Zipporah and her 2 sons had accompanied Moses to Egypt. But in verse 2, we learn that at some point, Moses had sent them back to Midian. This would have been a sweet reunion as Moses had accomplished the huge responsibility placed upon him, and the Israelites were now free. Wouldn't it have been wonderful to overhear the conversation that Moses and Jethro had? Yes, that was what I was saying. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, right? So then it is touching to think that Moses, who was the author of this book, included this tender conversation with his father-in-law. Jethro then took, so let me finish reading verse 9 to 12. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, for the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron came, and all the elders of Israel, to eat bread with Moses, his father-in-law, before God. Now, I don't know why they had mentioned his father-in-law that many times in the scriptures, but it makes me think that some of these pages were where they actually wrote the scriptures and then, had to be compiled together. That these were just like separate pages. And that in order to preserve the page itself, like they had to make sure that they wrote the relationship down. Because in case one page would get lost, then they wouldn't know who they were talking about, right? So I think that's probably the case. And then Aaron came and all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law. This suggests that the other Israelite leaders recognized Jethro's priesthood and authority. During this feast, Jethro would have tasted the manna, the bread rained from heaven, as he likely continued to hear stories of their deliverance of the Red Sea and of the miracles of the waters. What a memorable day for Jethro, right? For sure. Okay. Verse 13. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from the morning unto the evening. Now, if you've done anything in life that takes literally all day, it is taxing. Now, add talking to people and hearing about their problems, right? And that's got to be so heavy. Just like hearing about their problems all day. And when Moses, verse 14, and when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, What is this thing that thou doest to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone? And all the people stand by thee from morning unto even. And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one and another, and I do make them know the statutes of God and his laws. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, The thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away, both thou and this people that is with thee, for this thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. How many times do we try to do everything by ourselves, right? We need to delegate. So many times we are told to delegate in our business, and I think it's wise, and I delegate sometimes in my family. Like it's been really hard while my mom has been gone on her mission, serving a mission for the Lord. But she used to take care of our kids, and specifically our little girl, and it was always awesome, right? Because then I could get a little bit of work done or a little bit of other stuff done. And since she's been gone, I've had to get really creative in how we try to accomplish things. And luckily, it's been just fine, right? Like we've survived and we've done it. But it is so much harder when you don't delegate. So yeah, I totally think Moses would have been wearing away if he would just be the only one doing the same thing every day and not delegating anything, you know? Okay, so Moses was leading the people, and so he would sit and listen to the people from morning until evening. He wasn't just their deliverer, but he was their judge and lawgiver. The numbers of those he led was so large that the task was occupying all of Moses' day. As wise Jethro, a leader himself, observed what was happening, he told Moses that it was not good and that he was going to wear away, right? So Numbers 12 verse 3 says that Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And this is just another demonstration of his meekness. The same person who had parted the Red Sea and the same person who regularly had the Lord directing him, that same person would also take counsel from his father-in-law Jethro. Moses could have responded by complaining to Zipporah about his father-in-law giving advice he didn't ask for, or Moses could have said that if he should change his ways, the Lord would let him know. But instead, Moses was humble and meek enough to recognize wisdom and act upon it, and meek enough to include this record in these scriptures, right? He devoted a whole chapter about listening to his father-in-law. Meekness is great strength under control. Love that. Okay, so, and it came to pass on the morrow, did I already read these? Oh yeah, I did. I know, I keep going, it's because of the quotes. They go up and down, and it goes up and down. So I read the scriptures and then I read the quotes. Okay, so, verse 19, hearken now unto my voice. I will give thee, this is Jethro, I will give thee counsel, and God shall be with thee. Be thou for the people to Godward, that thou mayest bring the causes unto God, and that thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands and rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties and rulers of tens. And let them judge the people at all seasons. And it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge. So shall it be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place in peace. So Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law, and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel, and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, and rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way into his own land. Isn't that so cool that was what he was able to learn from him? Okay, so Elder Neil A. Maxwell says this: meekness is needed. Therefore, in order for us to be spiritually successful, let's start again. Elder Neil A. Maxwell says this: meekness is needed. Therefore, in order for us to be spiritually successful. Had Jesus not been meek and lowly when a great multitude with swords and staves came to take him, he could have resisted his destiny. Stephen spoke of Moses, and Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deeds. Though Moses was a learned man, he was most meek. He was the most meek man upon the face of the earth. So it was that he could and did learn things he never had supposed. End quote. Okay, that's from Elder Neil A. Maxwell, Meek and Lowly, BYU Devo, October 21, 1986. I love that, because if you're meek, you're willing to learn. And you're willing to learn and do things that you've never done before. And someone that comes to mind that has done that is Clark, my hubby. And I love that he has done that for us, is that he shares his story about addiction with others. And it's not something that he has done before, and it's not something that others have done before, because most people are ashamed and don't want to tell people, and they stay, hidden. But it is a meek man who can be humble and share that story, because it's something he'd never done before, and he was learning things he'd never learned before. And so I'm grateful for him for doing that. Okay, and then Elder Neil A. Maxwell also says, Moses was a righteous and remarkable man. Nevertheless, he needed to change his leadership style for his welfare as well as the people's. Moses succeeded because he was the most meek man upon the face of the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they are neither easily offended by counsel nor aggravated by admonition. If we were more meek, brothers and sisters, repentance would be much more regular and less stared at. Oh, that's awesome. End quote. Elder Neil A. Maxwell, Repentance, October 1991 General Conference. So, these scriptures are an excellent reminder for any leadership position we may have. It is so wise for us to discover what is of the greatest importance for us to do, and then focus our energy there. As Moses was sitting in judgment all day long, he was certainly busy doing good things, but not the most important things. Only Moses could teach the people ordinances and laws. But if he was getting worn out sitting in judgment, that might not happen. Notice that Moses needed Jethro's counsel and put able men that fear God and hate covetousness into positions as judges. Then, in the very next chapter, the Lord began to communicate with Moses on how to prepare the people for his covenant and to become a peculiar treasure. In the chapter following that, Moses received the 10 Commandments. What a wonderful lesson to help us see that things of lesser importance may be distracting us from the weightier matters. Oh, that's kind of cool. I did not realize that is what was coming. And yeah, we can't, the Lord cannot give us what we need for our next steps if we're too busy in the thin of thin things, the thick of thin things. Okay, here is our Read It, Live It. Woo! And it says, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. Is this what? I didn't even think I read that. But hey, sometimes I miss things. Okay. Okay, hold on. So let me just read this part because I don't remember it. So now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. For the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I remember that now. Okay, so Jethro had heard about God, but this was the moment he knew him. He didn't keep it to himself. He shared. Be the witness. Love that. And then this other one we have says, thou wilt surely wear away. Even Moses had limits. God's work was never meant to be carried alone. Share the load. Ooh, that's so good too. Okay. Until Exodus chapter 19, stay strong, warrior.